Good evening, you're watching Estuary TV News. Coming up, flying high with Domini aircraft at Humberside Airport. We meet the fire dogs saving lives. And I'll be talking to Tony Redding about today's anniversary of a devastating air raid over Germany. Welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Richards. First of all, it's over to Dan Kemp for the news headlines.
Hello there. Great Grimsby MP Austin Mitchell has defended claims made by a Sunday newspaper that Labour could be fielding a raving alcoholic sex paedophile and still win the seat. He dismissed the claims as bad journalism and summation of nought. He claimed the comments were in response to an attack on Melanie On, who will fight for his seat in May as Mitchell is retiring from Parliament. He added that Grimsby is loyal, Labour and great. A social media campaign has seen an iconic Hull landmark become a step closer to saviour. Dead Bod was painted during the 1960s as a drunken prank by seafarers and has acted as a sign of the way home since. The graffiti is on a shed that's due to be pulled down to make way for the Siemens development, and now the company who own the land have committed to trying to save it. In a statement, Philip Coombs of Associated British Ports said, ABP is committed to saving Dead Bod and we have engaged the services of a specialist contractor in order to do this. Safe removal and preservation is not something we can absolutely guarantee, but we are going to try. We welcome suggestions from the public on where his new home should be, but in the meantime, Dead Bod will go into a secure storage facility until he can be placed in his new permanent roost. Anyone with any suggestions is advised to contact ABP. Former Hull MP John Two Jags Prescott has been appointed as a climate change advisor by Labour Party leader Ed Miliband. The former Deputy Prime Minister said he was proud of the appointment, but on social media people have noted the irony of someone choosing the nickname Two Jags because he owned two of the high-emission sports cars to advise on combating global warming. Even Ranshaw in Louth has officially reopened. The shop has been the subject of a TV documentary called The Takeover, which aims to reinvent the shop's brand. The show will be fronted by former Dragon's Den star Hilary Devey, who explained the process of the transformation the shop has been through.
What we've done is had a cultural change. We've had a branding change in so much as they've now got a spa, they've got a cosmetics bar, which was not there previously. So in terms of an overall refurbishment, that has not happened. What has happened is that the employees have been refurbished, if you like, for want of better terminology. They have come through this journey with fight, determination, tenacity, and are determined to take this now forward.
That's all from me. Bye for now.
Built nearly half a century ago, two former military planes have made their final flight. It was a smooth swan song from their former home in the Cotswolds to their final resting place at Humberside Airport. There they joined three Hawk fighter jets for the benefit of engineering students at BAE Systems' £5 million R.J. Mitchell Aircraft Maintenance Academy, due to open its doors in the summer. James Dunn spread his wings.
A gift from above, this T1 touched down for the last time at Humberside Airport. Retired in 2011 after 45 years in the RAF, it's both a look back at the past and forward to the future.
A bit of aviation history. I mean, this airport is obviously, with 166 Squadron in the Second World War, with Lancaster bombers, etc., put its impact really, strongly in the Lincolnshire region. But for the Humber area as a whole, the airport is really starting to deliver on the investment that we all hope we will see coming forward in the future. And with the Domini aircraft here today and another one during this afternoon, it's very, very exciting, and for students in the future as well.
It was a smooth and uneventful final flight. And what better man to take control in the cockpit than Captain Wally Epton, who's been flying them for 4 decades.
I first started flying the Domini in 1974 when I took command of the Domini Squadron at Finningley, which is now Doncaster Robin Hood International Airport. And I've had a long association with HS-125s ever since, because on leaving the Royal Air Force, I've been in business aviation flying the Hawker, or the HS-125 as it's known, and I'm still flying it today. So one of the reasons why I think I was asked to fly the aeroplanes here from Kemble.
Staff backed the plane into the hangar where the engineers of the future will start their training later this year. There'll be 60 apprentices every year, and a cohort of 15 could start as early as March, as the £5 million training centre next door rapidly takes shape.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. The Academy's been open since 2009, and the arrival of the Dominies today will take us to the next phase of our training. To be able to actually have ground-running aircraft really is an exciting opportunity for us. The Hawks that you can see behind me now are static aircraft, and the opportunity to actually have a live ground-running aircraft is very exciting for us. The RAF used them for navigator training, for backseat navigator aircrew training, until about 2011, and since then they've actually been in storage at Cotswold Airport. So they've got a one-off flight authorisation to bring them up here today, and then, as I say, we'll be using them for flight line training.
It's the end of the line for these two Dominies, the final flight for these two former RAF planes. But here at their new home at Humberside Airport, it's far from the scrap heap. For these two 45-year-old aircraft, it's a new beginning.
You're watching Estuary TV News. A little later, we visit Caister for our weekly reflections, and Dan Kemp will bring you all the sports news. 70 years ago today, RAF Lancaster bombers based in Lincolnshire launched one of the most destructive bombing raids of the Second World War, and their last. I'm joined by Tony Redding, author of Bombing Germany, The Final Phase. Tony, thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Now, the Pforzheim raid that was launched 70 years ago today, I mean, this time 70 years ago, what would those crews have been doing?
Well, they would have had a pre-flight meal. They would have gone in to their briefing rooms, and over 2,500 of them, most of them would have been aged between 21 and 24, and they would have been told that they were going to bomb a place called Pforzheim, and frankly nobody had ever heard of it. It's about 45 minutes drive from Stuttgart, and it was a town in the front of the Allied advance across the Rhine in southern Germany.
Now, those bombers, the Royal Air Force was taking off, Bomber Command was taking off from where?
Well, they were taking off from many airfields, but this was an all-Lancaster attack force, and one of the squadrons preparing that afternoon to attack Pforzheim was 550 Squadron based at North Killingholme, and they were getting ready, dressing for the raid. They took off in the late afternoon, and they arrived over Pforzheim, a relatively small city, just before 8 o'clock in the evening local time.
And how many bombers flew?
362 bombers arrived over the city. They were led by a South African who was the master bomber. He was Captain Ted Swales, and he was to die that night. He was Bomber Command's last VC of the war.
Pforzheim, as you say, it's a relatively small town. This happened comparatively soon after the devastating raid over Dresden.
Just 10 days.
And Dresden we think of as the Great Fireball, that horrible, that dreadful raid. Pforzheim was equally, if not more destructive, that raid.
It was probably, in proportionate terms, the most destructive of Bomber Command's raids on a German city. Perhaps with some irony, it was also the last raid, the last area night raid of World War II on a German city, and it took place only 11 weeks before the end of the war. So, of course, many Pforzheimers over the years wonder why 1/4 of the city's population died that night, over 17,000 people.
Well, these area bombing raids always will be controversial, won't they? Because they were directly attacks on civilians. And at that point, Germany was already sort of inevitably winning the war. It's a matter of when, not if. Losing the war, it's a matter of when, not if. So was there any strategic or tactical purpose to the bombing raid?
Well, we now know that World War II ended during the second week of May 1945.
It did in Europe. Let's not forget the Eastern Army. But
yes, of course, but on continental Europe. But that wasn't known at the time in early February. and there were some serious questions about whether Hitler might have a last card to play in this war. Nobody knew whether he was prepared to use nerve gas or radiological weapons, or even how far they'd come with the atomic bomb.
But Pforzheim hadn't been hit by bombers before, so why that night? Why was it decided to take out Pforzheim at that point?
Primarily because it was a communications target. It was sited on the railway between Karlsruhe and Stuttgart, and that railway line was being used to reinforce the Western Front against the Allied armies that were about to cross the Rhine and penetrate into southern Germany. So that was the primary reason. There were other reasons.
Something to do with the particular skills they had in that town as jewel makers, or?
Yes, very special centre for munitions production, in that the workforce was highly skilled. This is the centre of the German jewellery and watchmaking industry, and it's for that reason that Pforzheim became one, if not the leading German centre of fuse production for shells and artillery. But at that stage, so late in the war, that wasn't the primary reason, but it certainly was a military target.
Was there not also in bomber? It was took at St Clement's Danes Church in the Strand in London, the RAF church. Very soon after the war, there was a statue of Hugh Dowding, who was the head of Fighter Command. But it wasn't until the 1980s, I don't think, until there was a statue of Bomber Harris, Sir Arthur Harris, who was the head of Bomber Command, because that bombing campaign was so much more controversial in a sense. How many members of the RAF lost their lives in that raid over Pforzheim?
Well, if you deal with Bomber Command generically through the war, there were 125,000 Bomber Command aircrew. 55,000 of them lost their lives, over 47,000 of them on operations. So the casualty rate was almost half, which is the highest for any British military unit in World War II. And
yet, because there is that question about how war should be waged and how total war, i.e. war involving the civilian population, should be waged, there still was that delay, as it were, in fully honouring those who gave their lives in Bomber Command.
Well, frankly, there was never any doubt about it at the time. There were very, very few voices speaking out against the bombing of Germany, perhaps for obvious reasons at that time. This country was fighting, and the rest of the Allies were fighting, an unspeakable tyranny. And it's not without irony that the success of Bomber Command accelerated the end of the war, made D-Day possible, and in doing so actually liberated the Germans as well as the rest of Western Europe.
Well, they should be celebrated, and you have done so to some extent in your book, Bombing Germany, the Final Phase, which is all about the Pforzheim raid specifically, isn't it? How can people get their hands on this book?
You can get it on Amazon and all good bookshops, that's the phrase.
And will it be electronically available as well?
Yes, it will.
And I hear there's going to be a German edition.
That's right. The intention is the city is part sponsoring the cost of producing a German edition because it's part of their heritage.
Tony, thank you so much for coming in. Absolutely fantastic story about the last great raid of the Second World War. Thank you very much. Man's best friend is increasingly becoming man's best colleague, sometimes man's best chance of staying alive. That's clear at Humberston Fire and Rescue, which has welcomed 2 new canine recruits, as Dave Nunn went to find out. There is some flash photography in Dave's report.
They're Humberside Fire and Rescue Service's newest recruits, having just finished their training. But they're not the firefighters we're used to seeing.
Correct. What it is we set up a community interest company called Canine Fire Investigation, and we're working in partnership with Humberside Fire and Rescue Service to supply them with specialist detection dogs. What these are specialised in is detecting hydrocarbons, which are ignitable fluids.
The dogs will be used as investigators to sniff out sources of fires. This could relate to cases where there's a suspicion of arson, or finding canisters or other objects used to start fires. The dogs have been trained using methods akin to bomb-finding dogs in the army.
The process is exactly the same. It's all play-based. It's all about the tennis ball, and all you do is change the substance. The slight difference between us and possibly drugs and firearms type dogs is we can't reward the dog at an incident, because when the dog indicates, we can't be 100% certain that it is what we're trained them on, and we can't. If we rewarded them, they could start indicating on everything. So we only ever reward them in training when we know what the source is that they're indicating on.
The training took 6 weeks and involved everything from agility exercises to being dangled from cranes. But Mike also underwent some training as for him it's about synergy between him and Etta.
First 2 weeks is all about the dog, teaching the dog, and then the other 5 weeks about training us as handlers, the paperwork, reading your dog, canine trauma, handling your dog in bizarre situations. It's all right getting your dog into an attic to have a look, but you try getting a dog out of an attic, they just splay the paws out and they don't want to come back down to you. So that was quite interesting.
Mike is now looking forward to working with Etta, even though he has other things on his mind.
The dog is doing real well. She is a really steady dog. Nothing phases her. Noise, people. I haven't come across anything that actually phases this dog yet. She's a really solid, steady dog. As you can see, all she wants is this tennis ball.
Richard Morris joins me now to round up the news over the weekend. Richard,
Hello again, Hugh. How
what's
are
been
you?
going on over the last 48 hours?
Well, all kinds of things. The media were invited on Sunday to go and see parts of the new Cromwell Road swimming pool which is being built. Of course, this has been met with much controversy throughout the North East Lincolnshire area since it was...
Will you be more precise about where is Cromwell Road?
Cromwell Road is right near the Grimsby Auditorium.
Grimsby, okay,
it's the £8.4 million new swimming pool which is going to be built alongside the existing facilities. And of course, with this plan, it also looks as though they're going to be closing Scartho Baths. Now, of course, this has become hugely controversial within the local area. People have been saying why at a time when we have very little money, but the council has been saying that existing facilities cost too much money to keep up, so it's actually cheaper to build new facilities.
When you say Scartho Baths, do you mean Scaffer Baths?
Yes. I'm afraid I don't say it like a proper Grimsbarian, but there we go. Are you a fast food fan, Hugh?
No, I like slow food.
Well, there we go. Apparently, Burger King in Hull would like some delivery drivers. Apparently, they trialled the system, and it's been hugely successful. The Burger King in St Stephen's, apparently, they trialled it out, and as a home delivery service. And of course, in a student city, when people have been doing dissertations, holed up away in their bedrooms all day, I'd imagine that probably is quite successful.
Doing dissertations? They're not doing dissertations. They're holed up playing video games all night. And drinking cheap cider, because that's what students are supposed to be doing.
The service is only available between noon and 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. So it's not really ideal for late night video gaming sessions. Not really.
It's not going to look after the munchies for them, is it?
No. And students at Caister Grammar managed to meet a Broadcast Journalist of the Year 2014, and they managed to brush up on their journalism skills. And apparently they learnt skills from a real sort of BBC journalist.
Well, I noticed that the Broadcast Journalist of 2013 is none of us. How can that be the case?
I don't know. I'm actually really hurt by this.
How have we been overlooked?
I have no idea. But he was suggested as the person to go to them, and it talks about they managed to produce them and produce these stories and showed students the pressures of journalism. Now, of course, the BBC is a much larger organisation than us, so if they want to see pressures of journalism, they could, of course, come here.
Larger organisation, but not necessarily better.
No, indeed not. So obviously, and they're getting set up for the BBC Schools Report, which is part of the annual thing where they allow students from across the country to, have a go at TV
people involved.
reporting.
Wonderful idea. Yeah.
And finally, a man who wrote for Hollyoaks, Neighbours and Grange Hill has come back to Scunthorpe to teach the craft of script writing.
Television writing.
Yep, English teaching. Mark Holloway has come back to Scunthorpe after many years, travelling across Australia and all over the world.
Brilliant.
And he's coming back to teach English in Scunthorpe.
More literary achievements there. Richard, thank you very much. Time now for reflections, this week with the Reverend Ian Robinson of St Peter's Church in Caister.
Well, if your house is anything like ours, last Tuesday you'll have had pancakes for tea, because we're now in the Christian season of Lent. Lent, of course, began last Wednesday on Ash Wednesday, and the day before is Shrove Tuesday, the day when we're supposed to give up all the luxuries that we enjoy. And so we move into a season between now and Easter when we're supposed to live a more Spartan lifestyle. Well, of course, that's the theory. I'm not sure people give up totally all the luxuries of life these days, but some people certainly do give up something, or perhaps take on something extra to do during this season when we're supposed to go for spiritual reflection. Taking time out to pause and reflect is not totally a bad thing to do. It's not just Christians who do this, of course. Our Muslim brothers and sisters have a period of fasting and reflection during the holy month of Ramadan. We live such busy lives these days, and very hectic lives. One day merges into another, one week becomes the next, a month passes by, and before we know it, a year has gone by. But to stop now and again, to pause and reflect, is a good thing to do. It allows us to look backwards, to look on the things that have gone well and be grateful for that and not take it for granted, and to look at the things that have not gone quite so well, and perhaps to resolve or find a solution to those problems. Well, I hope that I will live a good Lent this year, but also, like you, look forward to a happy Easter.
And now Dan Kemp is back with all the sports news.
Dalmondoi headed home an 88th minute winner to give Hull City maximum points in their relegation tussle with Queen's Park Rangers. The Tigers took the lead in the game through Nikica Jelavic before Joey Barton was sent off for striking Tom Huddleston. 10-man QPR fought back to 1-1, but the new signing in Doi gave City the points. Scunthorpe United lost 2-0 at Preston North End. The Iron are 16th in League One, but remain just 5 points from the playoffs. Grimsby Town won 3-1 at league leaders Barnet. The Mariners took the lead through Christian Jolly in the first half, but were pegged back before the hour. But Craig Disley and John Paul Pittman scored in added time to give Town the 3 points. And in the FA Trophy, North Ferriby United let a 2-goal lead slip in the semi-final first leg away to Bath. A known goal and adjacent St Juice strike gave them a 2-goal advantage before being pegged back, but the Villagers will go into the second leg this Saturday as slight favourites with home advantage. In ice hockey, the Hull Stingrays suffered a bad weekend, losing both games. Saturday saw the Rays lose 5-0 against the Fife Flyers before losing on penalty shots yesterday against the Edinburgh Capitals. Will Frederick scored twice, whilst Jordan Mayer and Carl Lozon netted the others. And in the Northern Counties Premier League, there were wins for Barton Town Old Boys and Bridlington Town, whilst promoting Churches Cleethorpes Town lost 6-0. And in Division 1, Bottisford Town, Grimsby Borough and Hall Road Rangers all drew, whilst the defeats for Louth Town and Winterton Rangers. Please don't hesitate to get in touch if you've got any sports stories you may want to share with us. You can do so by emailing sport@estuary.tv, contact us on Twitter or Facebook, or by calling 01472 315 561. And that's all for the sport.
Thanks, Dan. That's all we have time for today, I'm afraid. If you have a story for us, please go to our Facebook or Twitter pages. Details on the screen. Email news@estuary.tv or phone Grimsby 31553. Until tomorrow, good evening.
Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. Remaining cold and windy this Tuesday, with gales likely, further scattered showers during the day, mainly affecting the Pennines with a maximum temperature of 7 degrees. Mainly dry, bright and less windy Wednesday, cloud and rain will arrive during the evening and on the night.